The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At the sight of the crowds, Jesus' heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." Then he summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to drive them out and to cure every disease and every illness. The names of the 12 apostles are these: first Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew; James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John; Philip and Bartholomew; Thomas and Matthew the tax collector; James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus; Simon from Cana; and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Jesus sent out these 12 after instructing them, "Do not go into pagan territory or enter a Samaritan town. Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, make this proclamation: the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, drive out demons. Without cost you have received, without cost you are to give." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So I know that the homily should be addressed to everybody in the church, regardless of our state of life. But today it's Father's Day weekend, and I want to deviate just a little bit. So the message is for everyone, but particularly for the fathers today and all the men in the parish today. I think in these words of Jesus at the very beginning of the gospel, I think you are being addressed directly. At the sight of the crowds, Jesus was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. The laborers are indeed few, because in our contemporary culture today, as we all know, I think the virtues of masculinity and fatherhood are in short supply, and they really are virtues, masculinity and fatherhood. Less and less men today are taking up the responsibility of marriage, of parenting children, of being a leader in their communities, whether that's in the family, at work, in their church. Somewhere upwards, and this is a statistic from 2012, so it's higher now, somewhere upwards of 25% of children in the United States today do not have a biological father in their lives at home. And we all know the statistics that can result from that. Children without fathers are much more likely to experience homelessness, mental illness, commit crimes, experience abuse, commit abuse, and important for us here, to reject their faith. I want to speak about that very reverently and respectfully, because I know that in this parish and in any parish, there are many, many people who have an experience with single-parent homes. So I want to have as much respect for that as I can, because God works through every situation, and I respect your experience. But I also want to say, the truth that the powerful presence of a loving father in the life of a child can never be replaced. And I think more importantly, the loving presence of a father and a mother in the life of a child can never be replaced. I think men particularly, fathers too, in that category, are in danger of losing sight of what it means today to be a man at all. What it means to be self-sacrificing, loyal, hardworking, honest, courageous. A materialistic and a secular attitude which creeps in on us all the time. It makes it so easy to slide into a selfish mentality without even realizing it. This comes out most prevalently, I would think, in the mass media that we consume. How many movies or TV shows or social media posts are out there where men, and particularly husbands, can portray themselves as being shackled by their wives and their children. That the responsibilities that they've undertaken are actually barriers to their self-expression. That if only I didn't have these people in my life, then I could finally do what I want to do. Have we heard of that before? And see how much the evil one, the devil, twists our view of what is really good. That my wife, your wife, the love of my life, the beautiful children I've created with her, are burdens upon me, rather than the very object and goal of my life. The reason that it gives me to exist, that gives meaning to my life like no one else can. As with so much else, I think the loss of what masculinity really is a result, and femininity for that matter, is a result of our loss of devotion to the person of Jesus Christ, who was the perfect man. Jesus who came not to be served, but to serve. And Jesus who was a friend to the poor and loved children. Jesus who encouraged his disciples, but also chastised them when they went astray. Jesus who laid down his life for those he loved on the cross in self-sacrifice, which is the ultimate vocation of every father, of every man, of every woman, to lay down their lives for their friends. My own father, he died suddenly when I was finishing up my freshman year in college. He was diagnosed with brain cancer in May, and he passed away in July. He was an excellent model to me of not only what it meant to be a man, but what it meant to be a Christian man. He was very devoted to his faith, but never in a fanatical kind of way. Rather, he was a devout Catholic because he was convinced that Catholicism and what it taught was true. Catholicism taught him the truth about the meaning of life, the truth about the universe and where it was heading, where it was coming from, the truth about God himself. You know, every Sunday, my dad would make us study like this faith formation kind of books. We had to do it for a half an hour every Sunday after Mass, after we had breakfast. We had to work on these faith formation books, and then in high school, he made us go research these topics about the faith and then present to him what we learned, which was a pain, I thought, when I was there. But I learned so much about my faith through those just half an hour, 45-minute sessions with my dad after Mass on Sundays. It had such an effect on my life. You know, that homework and the steady flow of Mass every Sunday and Holy Day of Obligation, volunteering at church dinners and all that stuff that I did as a kid, they taught me valuable lessons about my faith and what it meant to be a Christian man. One was that there was no excuse for being ignorant about what I believed. Right? My dad hammered over and over again that to follow something that I knew wasn't true is irresponsible. Do I believe in the Catholic faith? Second was that the consistency and discipline in following my faith were key. And third, that the moral teachings of our church really do produce happy, holy, healthy people. And my dad had that effect on me. He wasn't a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination. He was a sinner. I'm a sinner. You're all sinners. That's the best thing about being in the church, is not that I'm so much better than everyone else, but that it's sinners coming together and trying to struggle through life together, adhering to the Lord's teachings. You know, I want to drive that fact home to the men here and all of us. We're all sinners, but that's the way that Jesus prefers it. You know, Paul says in one of his letters that we carry around this treasure of God's love in earthen vessels, which are easily broken. And that's the way God has designed us, weak and fragile. Look at the 12 apostles he chose. They've all got their big issues. You have Simon and Andrew at the head, who were fishermen, we all know, but we also know they were incompetent fishermen. There's never a time in the Gospels where Peter and Andrew catch anything on their own. They're always dealing around the water, not know what's going on. All Jesus has to do is tell them, look, just put it on the other side of the boat. You'll catch some fish. Not the smartest guys. Then you have James and John, who were hotheads. Every time they saw someone doing what they thought they shouldn't, they're like, let's call down fire from heaven on them. Jesus yells at them over and over again. You have Philip, who, not so smart, he was always asking Jesus about these really obvious questions, and Jesus would always rebuke him. You have Bartholomew, who was a bigot and kind of a racist. When Philip came to Bartholomew and said, we found the Messiah, he's from Nazareth, Bartholomew goes, nothing good comes from Nazareth. Those people are bums. Then you have Thomas, who was a doubter. You have Matthew, who was a tax collector and a thief. You have James and Thaddeus and Simon, who were so unremarkable that the Bible says nothing else about them. They must have had really no personality. And finally, we have Judas, who we all know who that turned out to be. Ordinary guys. Ordinary, weak guys. That's the same with us. They turned out to be excellent men. We can be excellent husbands and fathers, selfless pillars of our community. Jesus chose them, Jesus chooses you. I'll leave you all with this on this Father's Day weekend. I have had to make a lot of trips back and forth to school over the last 8 years, so to Minnesota and to Illinois, back and forth a lot. So you get to know the highways going out that way pretty well. And on the highways, there's billboards on every side, and they're always new. They're always replacing the billboards all the time, fresh and new billboards. And they're advertising whatever nonsense it is, fast food, insurance companies, companies that no Christian should ever go to because they're kind of ill repute, all over the highway. But there was one billboard that I remember because I saw it every time I drove. It never changed. It's faded and dingy and old, but you can still make out what it says, and someone's paying for it to be there. But it's this. It's just the headshot of a 12 or 14-year-old kid, a boy, looking into the camera, and it's got a quoted caption underneath. It's actually a government billboard from a website called fatherhood.gov, encouraging men to father their children. And it's the kid, and the caption is this: Dad is the one who always picks you up when you fall. Amidst all of the other billboards out there, that one positive message: Dad is the one who always picks you up when you fall. I think the men here, if we could get outside of ourselves and our own selfishness and let that statement be true for each one of us, that our families, our society, our church would be more human, it would be more stable, it would be more full of peace. There are many people out there, as Jesus said, who are troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. Search out those people, talk to those people, and lift them up. What is true of the merciful God should be true for each one of us, that Dad is the one who always picks us up when we fall.